Growing up, I spent a lot of my years trying to escape the shadow of my talented older brother. And now, as an adult, I can have a sense of humor about this, but when I was a kid, this was really painful. For a few years, my brother and I attended the same private school. And so when he was in 8th grade and I was in 5th grade, he won the most Christ-like award at his 8th grade graduation. Now, believe me, you do not want to go through life as the little brother of the most Christ-like kid in school. So if you have siblings, then there's this built-in desire to compete with them. And so for many of us, this competition, it shaped our identity. And for me, I knew at an early age, I was not the most well-behaved brother. I was definitely losing in the good kid department. No one handed me a trophy for being like Jesus. For some of you, you competed with your siblings over who won the most awards or who your parents liked better or even who got the most food at dinner. Everything was a competition. And as adults, we can laugh at how much weight we put on those silly competitions. But if we're honest, when we were kids, it was really painful. And this tendency I had as a kid to compete with my older brother, it really hasn't gone away. In fact, I just expanded the boundary to silently compete with lots of other people. I compete in my career. Am I further along than someone else? Am I recognized more than someone else at my job? I compete in my parenting. Are my kids brighter and taller and better behaved than others? I even see marriage as a competition. I'm gonna win some kind of trophy if my wife and I are happier than our neighbors, or if we fight less or go on more trips together. And I hope I'm not the only one who does this. And just for the sake of full disclosure, we don't just compete with people who we think are winning. We mentally compete with people who aren't doing so well too. Sometimes we look behind us as someone who is struggling, and we measure ourselves against their struggle. And I'm not proud of this, but there have been moments when I've looked at my marriage and thought, I may not be the kind of husband I should be, but at least I'm not like that guy. I'd still win in a husband race against him. And that is the most ugly way to think. It's toxic and it's a prideful way of thinking. But there's also a temptation to look ahead at people who are further along than me. I may think I'm doing pretty well in an area, as a dad, for example, but then I hear a story of a dad who built a gazebo with his son or took him on a 6-day hike, and all of a sudden I feel like I'm losing the dad race. And social media, that makes our tendency to compete 1,000 times worse. It's like this scoreboard that's never turned off. It's a constant stream of other people's vacation pics and food choices and parenting wins. And even if we think we're winning, a quick glance at Facebook can remind us that someone else is always getting ahead. And in addition to all of those areas, as a Christian, I even sometimes feel like I'm in competition when it comes to my faith. Is my faith greater than the people around me? Do I know more about the Bible? Do I pray as well as she does? Do I trust God as much as he does? Or at least, do people think I do? I know that doesn't sound healthy, but maybe you can relate. And maybe, like me, it can make you wonder, is this really how it should be? This is really what God had in mind when he gave us commandments in the first place, for them to be a scoreboard. So the past several weeks, we've been talking about how God called out a group of people out of the land of their slavery into a land that he promised to give them as their own. And we've seen how their experience was humorous at times and painful most of the time. It's as if they took 3 steps forward and 5 steps back, making what should have been a much shorter experience into a journey that lasted 40 years. And as we learned earlier, the Hebrew people had spent their lives as slaves, just working day in and day out with no concept of rest or vacation. And yet, once God called them out of slavery, he commanded them to rest, just 1 full day, every week. And then sometime later, God took that idea of rest even further. He gave them another command that could have seemed a little strange for people who weren't used to taking a holiday. So let's look at this together. But listen up, because we're going to read from a book of the Bible that most of us don't ever read from. These are the Lord's appointed festivals, the sacred assemblies that you are to proclaim at their appointed times. The Lord's Passover begins at twilight on the 14th day of the first month. Now, if you're like me, your eyes can tend to glaze over these types of verses because on the surface, they just seem boring. But in context, they're actually really interesting. So here's a group of slaves who had only known what it is like to work nonstop. And God commanded them to get out their calendars and mark off 7 times, 7 festivals, when they weren't to work at all. Now, some of these festivals were somber times of reflection, but a lot of these festivals were parties. God was telling his people to block off annual party time. Like, it would be easy for God's people to fill up their calendars with work. I mean, after all, the Hebrews had a long way to go toward reaching their destination of the Promised Land. But God had something else in mind for them. He wanted them to take time to celebrate. I mean, these were required parties. I mean, and some of you get this with no effort at all. I mean, you're up for whatever. You just want to bring on the party. But others of us, I mean, we're wired to always be thinking about what's next. I mean, maybe you're not the go with the flow type, and you realize that there's always something to do. And these kinds of people are either thinking of where they've been or what lies ahead, or both. So if you've had a hard time with what I just described, I mean, you're really going to have a tough time with what we say next. Say to the Israelites, on the 15th day of the 7th month, the Lord's Festival of Tabernacles begins, and it lasts for 7 days. The first day is a sacred assembly. Do no regular work. For 7 days, present food offerings to the Lord, and on the 8th day, hold a sacred assembly and present a food offering to the Lord. It is the closing special assembly. Do no regular work. Now, God was basically saying, party for 7 straight days. And several of the other festivals, I mean, they were parties too. I mean, some were multi-day parties. It's like when we tend to think of God, a lot of us tend to think of God as a stuffy old man in the clouds. But with several of these festivals, he is more like a party host who wants everyone dancing to just one more song. And God doesn't just demand these parties to be on the calendar for a few years. He demands they happen for as long as Israel is a nation. This is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. In other words, party every year, God was saying to his people. It's a command. But why? Like, why did God want his people to party? Let's take a closer look at 2 parties, the Passover and the Festival of Tabernacles. So every year during Passover, God's people were to remember the great things he did to rescue them out of Egypt. I mean, they were to remember that God passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt and spared our homes when he struck down the Egyptians. They were to celebrate what God had done. And then, a few months later, during the Festival of Tabernacles, there was another party. God wanted his people to take an entire week and live in temporary shelters for 7 days. So your descendants will know that I had the Israelites live in temporary shelters when I brought them out of Egypt. They were to celebrate how far they had come. Like, God wanted his people to celebrate for 2 reasons: for what he had done and for how far that they'd come. So in slavery, remember, God's people were competing to produce more and more. Like, they made brick quota or they met the grave. But God is different. Like, he wanted his people to shift their mentality, and he moved his people from competition to celebration. One step of faith is celebrating the steps. And celebrating may not seem like something worth making into law, but this is more about than a few days off or just having a good time. Like, the fact that God built celebration into his people's schedule, it tells us a lot about who he is and how he sees us. It means that he doesn't just care about our production or our performance or how well we can do. If he did, he'd just run our lives by the law of the brick: produce more and produce faster. But instead, God wanted his people to celebrate right in the middle of their journey, not when they had completed it or when they had everything together. See, the Israelites were nowhere near the Promised Land, and they were nowhere near being perfect representations of God or even representing God very well. But the celebrations were still on the calendar. Regardless, stop and have a party. God was saying, celebrate what I've done and how far you've come. Why? Because God loves us, and therefore he wants to celebrate any and all forward motion toward him, even the tiniest step. I love you. You're doing this, and this means a ton to me. He says that in the midst of the celebration. Look, celebration, it matters to God. So follow his lead. Like, have you taken a step forward? I mean, any step forward, then celebrate it. I mean, did you pray out loud at small group for the first time? Celebrate it. Did God give you the patience not to bite your child's head off when they were being ridiculously annoying? Celebrate it. Did God give you insight to see your spouse's perspective in the middle of an argument? Celebrate it. Did you finish a project at work that you asked God for tenacity and stamina to complete? Celebrate it. I mean, any and all forward motion, celebrate it. I mean, even if it's 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, celebrate it. Thank God for what He's done and celebrate how far you've come. But don't just stop there. Celebrate others' forward motion on their journey too. I mean, celebrate what God has done and how far they've come. I mean, is the workaholic next door cutting down his hours at work so that he can be a better father? Celebrate it. Are the neighbors taking a much-needed vacation, but pricey? Celebrate it. Did your skeptical coworker decide to take her first step by coming to church? Celebrate it. Look, if you find yourself competing against someone for whatever reason, let it serve as a little red flag waving over a place in your heart. Something in your heart isn't lining up with God's. For one, another person achieving something doesn't rob you of anything. I mean, there isn't a limited amount of success and someone has taken yours when they achieve. No one has stolen your blessings. Trust that God has goodness in store for you too. And if you find judgmental thoughts rising up when someone is taking steps toward God, talk to God about that too. Because God is always pro-forward motion, no matter who is taking the steps. So instead of competing or judging, do what God commanded His people to do. Celebrate. The antidote to unhealthy competition or comparison is celebration. I mean, goodness is happening, and that deserves some rejoicing. If you only celebrate your own progress, you're missing out on praising God for what He has done and is doing in others. You're missing out on the party, and you know that God loves a good party. When it comes to your faith, celebration is greater than competition. Now, for some of us, you've been burned by church, and I would be willing to bet you feel condemned. You were made to feel guilty for the steps you didn't take, and you were never celebrated for all the steps that you did. But every step matters to God. What if we were the kind of church that believed that? I mean, what if we celebrated the steps that every person in your church took, instead of pointing out all the steps that people aren't taking? Like, imagine if that was everyone's church experience. I mean, imagine if people came to church because they knew every step they took forward, every movement towards better decisions and a better life, were going to be celebrated at that place. I mean, that would change the reputation of the church forever. I mean, it would produce people who celebrate instead of condemn. And it would send a message to the world about what God is like, about what He cares about, and what He values. Look, religion points out what people aren't doing, but that's not God. He celebrates what people are doing. He celebrates the steps. And so as we close out today, God has invited all of us to take steps, and all of us have taken steps, but not all of us have celebrated the steps we've taken. So, what's a step that you need to celebrate? And what's a step you've seen someone else take that you need to celebrate? Because that's what God is asking and inviting us all to do. Celebrate.